Way back 2,000 years ago, in a region called Galilee, something new was starting. At the heart of it was a man, Jesus, whose ministry was about to go head to head with the biggest religious and cultural rules of the day. So let's dive into how he did it, because it all starts with one big question. And this is it. This is the central tension of the whole story. You're going to see it play out over and over again. This clash between following the law to the letter and focusing on what people actually need. Which one wins? And it doesn't take long for this tension to just erupt. The flashpoint? One of their most sacred traditions, the Sabbath, the day of rest. What Jesus does on this day is going to spark his first huge fights with the religious leaders. And it all kicks off in, of all places, a grain field. So, picture this. His disciples are hungry, so they grab some heads of grain to eat as they walk. Simple enough, right? Well, not to the Pharisees. To them, that's work, and it's a major no-no. But Jesus doesn't even argue about the rule. He goes bigger. He says, look, human needs sometimes comes before the rule. And then he drops this bombshell. He says that he, the Son of Man, is actually Lord of the Sabbath. He's claiming authority over the rule itself. Okay, so the very next Sabbath, things get even more tense. Jesus is in the synagogue, and you better believe the religious leaders are there too. And they're not there to worship. The text is crystal clear. They are watching him, basically setting a trap, just waiting for him to slip up so they can pounce. The whole room is a powder keg. Now, to really get what happens next, you have to understand the world they lived in. This was an honor-shame culture. So this isn't just a debate about ideas, it's a public showdown. It's like a high-stakes chess match where your reputation is everything, and the entire community is the audience. You don't win by being right. You win by making your opponent look wrong in front of everybody. And Jesus plays this game like a master. First move, he makes a spectacle. He calls a man with a withered hand right up to the front for everyone to see. Second move, he springs the trap. He asks them a question they can't possibly answer without shaming themselves. Is it okay to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil? Silence. They know they're caught. And then, checkmate. He heals the man right there in front of everyone. It's a public miracle, and in that culture, that's like a stamp of divine approval. He completely wins the honor game. And get this, there's another layer here that's so easy to miss. The story specifically says it was the man's right hand. Now, in the ancient world, your right hand was everything. It was the symbol of your strength, your ability to work, your very worth. The left hand? Often seen as unclean. So when Jesus heals this man's right hand, he's not just fixing a limb. He is literally restoring this man's dignity, his livelihood, and his place in society. So, after challenging the established rules, Jesus starts to lay out his alternative. And it's a totally radical new ethic. In a famous teaching, he basically takes the world's value system and flips it completely upside down. Just look at these opposites. Luke's version of this teaching is so raw and personal. It's not some abstract philosophical idea. It's blessed are you who are poor. Blessed are you who are hungry right now. He's looking directly at the suffering people in the crowd and telling them a great reversal is coming, where the people the world ignores will become the celebrated ones in God's kingdom. And the whole foundation for this upside-down kingdom, the engine that makes it all run, is this one powerful idea, the golden rule. This isn't just a nice little saying about being polite. For Jesus, this is the core command. This is the principle that drives everything else he's about to demand. So what does that look like? Well, starting with the golden rule, he builds this incredibly challenging new standard. It's not just don't hurt your enemies, it's love them. Actively do good to people who hate you. You see, the focus is shifting completely. It's no longer just about following external rules, it's about the internal character of your heart. But here's the thing. Jesus doesn't just preach about this radical compassion. He goes out and he lives it. The very next stories we see show him putting these exact ideas into practice. First up, we meet a Roman centurion. Now think about that. This guy's an outsider, an officer in the army that's occupying their land. But he's got a great reputation. And he has a servant he loves dearly. And when that servant gets sick, on the verge of death, he asks for Jesus' help. What the centurion says next is just astounding. He's a commander, right? He understands authority. And he tells Jesus, you don't even have to come to my house. Just say the word, and I know he'll be healed. The faith of this outsider is so incredible that the Bible says Jesus himself was amazed.
It's a huge sign that this kingdom isn't just for one group of people. Right after that, Jesus is walking toward a town called Nain, and he runs right into a scene of pure, devastating grief. A funeral procession is coming out of the city gates. A widow is about to bury her only son.
And we really can't overstate how catastrophic this was. For a widow in that culture, losing her only son meant she lost everything: her financial support, her protection, her future, her entire world, her entire safety net was in that coffin. And pay close attention to what the story says next. It doesn't say Jesus saw a great opportunity to perform a miracle. It says he saw her, the widow, and his heart went out to her. He had compassion. The miracle flows directly from that empathy. So he touches the coffin, tells the young man to get up, and he does. But look at this beautiful personal detail Luke adds. He gave him to his mother. It's not some flashy, impersonal display of power. It's a tender act of restoring a woman's son, her family, her future. Okay, so we've seen these incredible moments, challenging rigid rules, teaching a new ethic of love, healing outsiders, even raising the dead. It's all been building to this, a single moment where Jesus is asked point blank to define what his mission is all about.
And the question comes from John the Baptist. He's locked up in prison now, and he's hearing all these stories about Jesus. And apparently, he's having some doubts. This maybe isn't the kind of Messiah he was expecting. So he sends his own followers to ask Jesus directly, "Are you the one we've been waiting for, or not?"
But Jesus doesn't just give them a simple yes or no. Instead, he points to his track record. He basically says, "Don't take my word for it. My actions are my answer. Go back and tell John what you've seen with your own eyes." And this is where it all clicks into place. The things John's disciples have been witnessing, the blind seeing, the dead being raised, good news being preached to the poor, they line up almost line for line with the mission statement Jesus read from the scroll of Isaiah way back at the beginning of his ministry. His actions are his identity. He finishes his message to John with this quiet challenge. It's like he's saying, "I know this might not look like the fiery revolution some of you were expecting, but this is it. This is how God's promises are being fulfilled. The blessing is for anyone who can see it for what it is."
And that brings us right back to the beginning. From that grain field to that funeral procession, every single story we've looked at pushes against rigid systems in favor of radical, life-changing compassion. And it leaves us with a question that's just as relevant for us today as it was in ancient Galilee. What does it really mean to put people before principles?